Hey guys, Socket here. Today we're going to continue on with our Room EQ Wizard car audio tuning tutorial series, and today we're going to continue on from our last episode where we were taking sweep measurements using the acoustic timing reference and a USB mic to get phase and impulse information from our car speaker measurements. And so in today's episode we're going to continue on with the tune by doing the level matching and crossover settings. But I've covered this topic a couple of times before in earlier tutorials, and so if you're a regular viewer, I don't want this to become too repetitive, so I'm not going to dive into all the details as I have done before. I'm just going to skip through the technique pretty quickly, but I hope you can still follow along. Alright, let's pull up the measurements and get going. Okay, so I've got all the measures from our last session. What I've done is deleted all the Bluetooth, the sweeps that we did where we were Bluetoothing the signal to the DSP, because what we found was below about 40 Hertz we had this weird crazy bump that was going on, which meant that that technique really wasn't suitable for working with our subs. So what I've done is just kept the measures where we had the laptop directly connected to the DSP via the head unit, and we were sending the acoustic timing reference chirps and the sweep using the REW measurement tool via the head unit. So all of that said, we're going to move forward with this set of measures. So before we get started, as I said, I'm going to skip through this pretty quick, assuming that you've watched a couple of these level matching crossover videos before. First thing we want to do is set our target line. So we're going to get rid of our front and right subs and just look at the main speakers. So you can see that they're kind of all over the place, but if you kind of run your eye, rough it in, it's around about this 55 mark. Okay, you don't want to set it too high, you don't want to set it too low, and sort of in the Goldilocks zone, right here at 55. So I think that's where we're going to set our house curve. To set our house curve, we go into the EQ tool. Doesn't really matter which. Let's try using this one here. So we can get rid of the bottom pane. We don't need that. We don't need the measurement or the predicted on, but we do need target. So this will be our house curve. We go to target settings. We want the house curve to be a full range. Don't need to worry about these. We need to add a house curve. The first thing we want to do is put in our target level of 55. That's the level that we roughed in. Then we want to get rid of this dip at the high frequency end by changing that to 0. That makes it nice and flat. And then we want our low frequency rise, or our bass rise, to start from 200 or 250, something like that, and slope up. So we're going to start it at 250, end at 20, have a 6 dB rise per octave, and there is our house curve. So we can now add that to our measurements by clicking on Generate Measure from Target Shape. And if we go back, we'll see it down here, added to our measurements. Let's call that target, house curve. Right, fantastic. And we'll turn it black so it's nice and obvious. So now that we have that line, we can bring up our various speakers and try to level match them to this black line. So we've got the left tweeter and the right tweeter. Left in red, green is the right, and you can see that these are not level matched. If we look at the green line, that's got to come up a little bit, and if you look at the red tweeter, that's got to come down. So just how much? Let's find out. So let's start with measurement actions. Let's start off with the left tweeter first. See how far we've got to come down. So that's about right somewhere. Let's 3.5 dB. So we now go into the DSP, select our left and drop that down 3.5. There we are. Oops, don't want to do that. 3.5. Now what you would do is you would go and measure your left tweeter again. A measurement for the left tweeter would pop up down here. You would delete the old measurement and slide the new measurement up to the top. Now I'm simulating this, so I'm going to add this negative 3.5 dB cut to the data, which is a simulation of remeasuring the speaker after you've made the change in the DSP. So I add that. So that takes care of the left tweeter. Now we're going to adjust the right tweeter, and I think that needs to come up maybe a fraction, maybe 1, something like that. You can see that's now this sort of better match through this area. So we'd go into the DSP, we go to the right, and we're going to add on 1 dB. Excellent. Same thing, you go and remeasure your right tweeter, replace the old measurement with the new one, and we have our tweeters level matched and good to go. So now let's move on to the next pair, which will be our mids. So let's get rid of everything, put our house curve back on. Let's put on our left mid and our right mid. And you can see once again here they seem to be matching okay. They've got some big dips and then they're way off down here. When you're level matching, you want to sort of be within plus or minus 6 dB if you can. And so what are we going to do in this case? They seem to be pretty matched through this area and not so much through here. But is this really important to us? Let's have a look. Let's look at our tweeters. So when we bring our tweeters in, they're interacting with the speakers around about this 3000 mark. So our crossover is going to be somewhere in here. So all of this stuff above 3000, 4000, 5000 is not really important to us in terms of level matching. Okay, so let's turn those tweeters off. So really concerned with from here this way in terms of level matching. So maybe we need to lift this orange line or the right mid a little bit. Let's check that out. So right mid, see if we lift it up a bit. It gets this, a little better. Yeah, not sure. So one of the things that we can do, if I just reset that to 0, is go into, turn that off, go into actions, align SPL, and click OK. And that's made it worse, so we won't do that. Just undo everything. And we'll go back to the manual process. Worth a try. So you can have a bit of a play around with it. I think that it's probably not too bad, to be honest. I mean, we've got this big scoopy dip thing out, which is a cancellation due to my tweeter pod on the windscreen, and if that wasn't there, that blue line would be pretty much following the house curve, right? And then it's pretty much matched all the way through here. So I'm not sure that these two actually need adjusting, because this is not not something to do with level. This is actually a cancellation due to the tweeter pod. So I think probably leave them the way they are. Okay, so that would be the right mid and the left mid. So we can take those out. Now let's have a look at the left and right mid bass. We've seen this in other videos where we had this scoop out in the shoulder on the right mid bass. But once again, they're just about to touch the they're just touching the house curve here. They're following each other pretty well through this area, so I think as a pair they're pretty much level matched. So that looks fine. So that brings us to the front sub and rear sub. So let's look at the front sub. and we can get rid of the mid basses. And so the front sub is well and truly above 6 dB above the line here. So what's that, 82 versus the intersection here at 64. So 18, what's that, 18 is it? 18 dB higher. So we could literally cut 12 out of that maybe. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. So the front sub minus 12 would bring it down to here, and from there to there, 70 through to 64, so within 6 dB. So that I'm going to pop that there, because when we put our crossovers in, that will pull the level of the front sub down as well. But as I said, we're just roughing in our levels and our crossovers at the moment. So let's go put 12 dB on the front sub. So we would go into our DSP, into our subwoofer, pull out 12 dB. There we go, 12 dB. Once again, you would measure it, replace the old measurement with the new measurement, and that's the front sub done. Now that then brings us to the rear sub, which once again is at the absolute peak at 88 versus 68, so 20 dB higher. We could bring that down 20 dB higher, 14 dB maybe. So if we go to the rear sub, take 14 dB off, and that's brought that right down. And we'd go into the DSP again, go to the rear sub, take off 14 dB, sounds like a lot, and you would remeasure it, etc., etc., replace the old measurement, right? So that is all the speakers roughly level match. So let's bring them all up and have a quick look, make sure they kind of all look following this curve. So yes, we have this big massive scoop out, which we'll need to do something about, but otherwise, you know, when we EQ all of these things above the line will get EQ'd down, and all of these dips below the line will get EQ'd up. Probably won't happen with that, but we'll see. So that is level matched. Now let's have a look at the crossovers. So as we know, setting crossovers is about managing the interaction zone between two speakers. So if we bring up the left tweeter and the left mid, starting at the top, working our way down, we can see that they're crossing over all through this period here, but you kind of want to set them, in this case, you know, the tweeter is rolling off, you know, in this kind of area. So it's pointless setting the crossover down here. So I would say, you know, 3,400 for the left tweeter, left mid interaction. So let's look at the right tweeter and the right mid. Is it in a similar type of area? Well, the levels are a little bit lower here. Probably 3.4 is up here somewhere. It might be safer to, in both cases, just drop it down a little bit. I mean, you wouldn't probably go to 2.6. Maybe start at 3,000. So if we bring the left tweeter and the left mid in, maybe where they're all sort of banging up here, maybe at 2,800, seems quite low for the tweeters because they're already, you know, starting to roll off quite a long way. So I think we'll bring the crossover back a bit and let's pick something like 3,200. Now, as I've mentioned before, we don't have to be super exact about this because we're just roughing in the crossovers. They will move when we come and do the EQ work. We'll have to slide them up and down to get them to work with our house curves, but more about that when we do EQ. So let's go throw in 3,200 as a crossover for in our DSP. So we're going to start with the left tweeter first. We want to put in 3,200. for the left and 3200 on the right. And then on the mids, we want to take out the bypass 3200, take out the bypass on the other mid 3200. Okay, let's quickly just double check that we haven't made a mistake. It's looking okay, so why is that one? What is that little thing doing there? Just turn those off again and see which one it is. I think it's because I've got the, what have I missed? It's the right mid. There we go. So we haven't turned the bypass off, so that should be 3200. And that's why it's a good idea to just double check these, right? Because you can spot an error before it happens. Okay, so that's the tweeter mid crossover set. Now we're going to turn off the tweeters because we don't need them any longer, and we're going to do the mid versus mid bass crossover. So let's start with the left. It's crossing over roughly at 200. Let's look at the right. It's crossing over roughly at 170. If you look at the mid bass, they're rolling off, around about the 185 mark. So we'll just get rid of that and that. They're rolling off something like this. So around about the 200 mark. The mid bass, on the other hand, it's kind of playing, I'm not sure, around this area, 160. Maybe the right is not holding off as much. But just popping them all back on together, it feels like here seems like a good crossover. So about 170. So into the DSP, starting with the mid, we want that to be 170 at the, need to turn the bypass off. 170, we want, turn these other things off. We want the left mid to be 170. Did it again. There we go. So left mid, right mid, left low. We want that to be 170. Yep. And we want the right low. Take the bypass off. 170. Okay, let's just double check everything looks okay. Yep, fine, no problems. All looks good. Okay, so that's now the mids and the mid bass done. Turn off the mids. We now have the mid bass left versus the front sub. So we've seen this before, where the this system, if I turn the front sub off and turn the rear sub on, this system could really play without a front sub. It doesn't really need it, but we're working with one. So what we would do and have looked at before is the crossovers at 170, which is pretty much the same point at which we're crossing over with the mids. So it wouldn't make sense to put a crossover there. What would make sense is to put a crossover close to where the front sub is rolling off and where the mid bass is rolling off, which is around this region here, right? It's rolling off there, it's rolling off there, so somewhere in here. So let's pick a number. I think 100's been a pretty standard crossover that we've used in some of the other tutorials. So and if we bring in the right mid bass and just double check it, there's this bit of a scoopy out thing going on. You probably don't want to put a crossover right in the middle of all of that. And yeah, so I think 100 is a good starting place for a crossover. So back into the DSP, we're starting with our, turn these off again. So we're starting with our left mid bass. We want turn the bypass off. We want the low to be 100 Hertz. We want the other one to be 100 Hertz. And we want our front subwoofer to be 100 Hertz, which, look at that, that's pretty handy. So front subwoofer and the mid bass. Now, we've seen this before when you put two crossovers very close to each other, it tends to pull the level of the mid bass, of the speaker down. So if you have a look at that, that's at about -5 versus 0, so it's 4 or 5 dB lower. What we would typically do is do the crossover measures and then adjust or sort of level match the mid bass and bring them up a little bit. Okay, so that's the mid bass front, so we can turn that off. Let's go and do the front sub versus the rear sub. So here's the rear sub, here is the front sub. Once again, they're playing pretty much the same range. It would make more sense to set a crossover where the front sub is kind of rolling off, or where they're interacting. So that's around, according to this, the 65 mark. Now what's happening with this sub is there's a bit of boosting going on here, so that's probably not, if you really look at what's going on with the sub, it's probably playing something like this. Yep. So you could quite easily put the crossover anywhere between the 50 and 65 mark maybe. So once again, we're just roughing this stuff in. So I think maybe 55 is probably a good a place as any. So we go into the DSP. For the front sub, we would make this 55. Oops, take the bypass off first. 55, and then on the front sub, we leave this high pass bypassed, and then this one becomes 55. So that is all the crossovers are now set. Let's just have a look at them all, make sure that they look okay. So, and once again, adding those crossovers so close together has pulled the front sub down. Not quite as much as the mid bass, but 4.5 dB or something versus 5 dB. So we'll fix them up when we level match, when we next measure the speakers. Alright, so that is all the levels in, all the crossovers in, and everything level matched. So I think that brings us to the end of this tutorial today. In the next episode, we'll go and measure all of these speakers with the crossovers in and see what sort of results we get, and then do some final level match adjustments so that all the speakers are following the house curve and we're kind of ready to start doing some EQ work. I hope you found that interesting. Like I said, we skipped through that a lot quicker than I have in some previous versions of the crossover videos. But I hope I wasn't too quick and you could still follow along. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching. If you've got any comments, please chuck them down below, and otherwise I will see you in the next episode.